Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Ayman Nazir and welcome to Knowledge Realm. Today we are here to discuss a recent development that happened in Middle East, a peace deal that was mediated by China. I'm talking about the Iran and Saudi Arabia peace deal. Viewers, we know that in March of 2023, these two rival countries, these two adversaries, came to an agreement and a peace deal was mediated by China. So today we're going to discuss this in detail. We're going to study the background of the conflict and then what this peace deal was about and then the implications of this deal. Starting with the brief introduction of the Iran and Saudi Arabia peace deal, this deal is brokered by China. And on March 10, 2023, both the sworn enemies, that is Iran and Saudi Arabia, reached an agreement and peace was made between these two countries in Beijing. Ali Shamkhani, who is the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, represented Iran, and Mossad bin Muhammad al-Aban, who is a security advisor of KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, represented Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in these talks. Then Wang Yi, who is the director of the Office of Foreign Affairs Commission, represented China. Viewers, both the countries severed ties in 2016 and closed the embassies of one another in their countries. Now, with the efforts of China, both the countries have reached an agreement of peace and both the countries have resumed ties. They are expected to resume all the agreements that they made before 2016, and both the countries will reopen the embassies also. In fact, Tehran has already opened its embassy in Riyadh, and Iran opened the embassy on June 6, 2023 in Riyadh. Now we'll see that when Saudi Arabia will open its embassy in Iran. So this was just the brief introduction of the peace deal. Now in the next few slides we would discuss in detail the background of the conflict and the peace deal in detail also. Starting with the background of the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Before starting the peace deal, it would make more sense if we study the background of the conflict and we study that why these two Muslim countries have been sworn enemies of each other for many decades. So, viewers, the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran is called Cold War of Middle East. This conflict is of ethnic nature, sectarian nature, cultural nature, economic nature, and nuclear weapon nature also. There have been many conflicts between these two countries, but majorly the most prominent nature is of ethnicity. There is an ethnic conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Primarily, the conflict is of ethnic nature. Students, there is a historical ethnic conflict between Arabs and Persians since centuries. They look down upon each other. Arabs believe that they are better than Persians and Persians believe that they are better than Arabs. They look down upon each other. An example I would like to give here that would depict that how they look down upon each other and how they believe that yes, we are better than Persians, and then Arabs believe that they are better than Persians and the Persians believe that they are better than Arabs. I'd like to give an example here. Viewers, in 2016, a war of words started between the two countries. In 2015, some Iranians, I would not say some, many Iranians and many people died in a stampede during Hajj. This tragedy happened, and then Iran accused Riyadh of mismanagement of Hajj in 2015. Iranian leaders accused that the Arabs are heartless people, they are murderers of Iranians. Then Saudi definitely did not stay quiet and they retaliated. They said that Iran is trying to politicize Hajj by using this tragedy. Then they started fighting the war of words, and they exchanged cruel words, and they started barb trading. And Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti Abdulaziz al-Sheikh called Iranians non-Muslims and fire worshippers. He said that these people are enemies of Islam and they are not Muslims. He said that they are Majusis. So this was just an example that how these two ethnicities look down upon each other. Iranian believe that they are better and Arabs believe that they are better. So there is a conflict of ethnicity between these two countries. And this conflict is centuries old, viewers. This is not a new conflict, this is centuries old. Then there is a sectarian conflict between these two countries. Students, sectarian conflicts means that conflict between Shia and Sunni Muslims. Iran is majorly Shia and Saudi Arabia is majorly Sunni. Iran is considered the leader of Shia countries, Shia Muslims, and Saudi Arabia is considered the leader of Sunni Muslims. So there is a sectarian conflict also between these two countries. Now students, let's study that when this rivalry gained momentum and when in the modern era it started actually. Well, the rivalry started in 1979 after the Iranian Revolution. In 1979, Iranians started Iranian Revolution, which was a series of events that culminated in the overthrowing of the monarchy of Reza Shah Pahlavi. Viewers, before this revolution, Iran was a monarchy, and this monarchy was backed by USA. Reza Shah Pahlavi was the last monarch of Iran. This right here is Reza Shah Pahlavi. And he was also called the Shah of Iran, Shah-e-Iran he was called. Well, revolutionaries called for overthrowing the monarchy and replace with Islamic republics. This was the main aim of the revolution. They did not want monarchy in the country and they wanted an Islamic republic. They wanted theology in the Iran. So a person, a Shia cleric, actually Ayatollah Khomeini, he was the leader of this revolution. And his followers, the people, overthrew the monarchy of Reza Shah Pahlavi, and the Islamic Republic of Iran was founded in 1979. After that, there was no monarchy in Iran but the rule of theology. So this is what happened in Iran. But why it perturbed Arab countries, why it perturbed Saudi Arabia, and why Saudi Arabia felt alarmed and threatened? Because, viewers, in Saudi Arabia there was monarchy also, and they feared that now this revolution, the revolution of Iran, would expand in Arab countries and the monarchy of Saudi Arabia would also be overthrown. So this thing alarmed Arab monarchies. Then the Iranian Revolution, the leaders of Iran started undermining the image of Saudi Arabia as the leader of Muslim world. They started questioning the image of Saudi Arabia as the leader of Muslim world. Iran challenged Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia also felt threatened. Saudi Arabia believed that Saudi Arabia is the leader of Muslim world and now Iran is rising. There would come a time when Iran would start claiming itself as the leader of Muslim world. So this was the main conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran after the Iranian Revolution. Then Shia-Sunni conflict also arose in Saudi Arabia. Iran is majorly Shia and Saudi Arabia is majorly Sunni. So these two countries started sectarian conflict also. There is a Qatif conflict in Saudi Arabia also. Viewers, Qatif is a region in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia where majorly Shia people reside, and a conflict erupted in this region after the revolution of Iran. This was not a new conflict. This conflict had been there in Saudi Arabia before the revolution even, but after the revolution it renewed. And the Arab Shia of that region, Qatif region, and Arab Sunni started fighting in that region. There were uprisings and bloody clashes between Saudi security forces and Shia majority of Qatif region. So this thing gave an idea to the world and Iran also that in Arab, Shia are not protected and not safe, and Saudi Arabia is majorly the state of Sunni people. So Iran and Saudi Arabia started fighting on this sectarian conflict. It bolstered the rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So this is how the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran started, and this is how the rivalry was bolstered because of the sectarian conflict. In addition to ethnic conflict and sectarian conflict, there is also proxy conflict between these two countries after Iranian Revolution, and after starting the sectarian conflict, these two countries started a Cold War. And we know that in Cold War, the two belligerent start fighting proxy conflict. They start fighting proxy wars. So Iran and Saudi Arabia fought proxy wars in Yemen. In Yemen, Iran supports Houthi rebels, whereas Kingdom of Saudi Arabia supports the government. And they also fought the proxy war in Syria. In Syria, Iran supports the Bashar al-Assad and KSA supports the opposition group. And then another conflict that is in Iraq. So these are the proxy wars fought by the Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. Then viewers, there is also economic conflict between these two countries. These two countries are rich in oil. And Kingdom of Saudi Arabia provides oil to United States. Now Iran is a rival to USA. Before the Iranian Revolution, Iran was friend of USA and Iran was providing oil to USA. But after the revolution, it became a rival to USA. And it is believed that Iran is being suppressed by USA by imposing sanctions. USA imposes sanctions on Iran, and it is suppressing Iran because it wants to prevent the development of Iran. This is something that some people believe, and this turns out to be the economic conflict between the Saudi Arabia and the Iran. Then there is also a conflict of nuclear weapons. We all know that Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons. Iran is trying to possess nuclear weapons. But we know that today in 21st century, we live in a time where nuclear weapons are not considered good, and the international society is trying to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons, because we all know that nuclear weapons are deadly for entire globe. So Iran is trying to accumulate, Iran is trying to possess nuclear weapons, it is trying to design nuclear weapons, and KSA fears this development of nuclear weapons by Iran. Because KSA believes that if Iran in the future becomes successful in designing these nuclear weapons, this would be threatening for Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is a rival to Iran, and a rival nuclear power is definitely not good. It is threatening. Saudi Arabia opposed Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile advances, and in 2018 it threatened to pursue nuclear weapons if Iran produces a bomb. In September 2019, Riyadh blamed Iran for drone and cruise missile attack on two major oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. So these are some of the conflicts between Iran and Saudi Arabia. We have discussed the background of the conflict. Now we have discussed the nature of the conflict. I hope that all of this makes sense and all the viewers are understanding very well. So we have studied in detail and now we understand that what is the nature of the conflict between KSA and Iran. It is of ethnic nature, cultural, sectarian, proxy war, economic and nuclear weapons also. We have studied this in detail and now we know the nature of the conflict between these two Muslim countries. We have also studied the Iranian Revolution. When this rivalry actually gathered momentum, the rivalry was strengthened and both the countries accepted each other to be rival officially in the world. In 1979, the monarchy of Reza Shah Pahlavi was overthrown in Iran, and this was the thing that threatened the monarchies in Arab countries. So after this, both the countries started accepting each other as the rival countries. So this is the main background of this conflict. But students, now we're going to study that what happened after or in 2016 and after 2016 that led to the cutting of ties between these two countries. Now we're going to study this. Well, in 2016, I've explained it in the previous slide also, a war of words started between these two countries. In the Hajj of 2015, Iranian people died in a stampede and then the leader of Iran accused the people of Saudi Arabia of not being able to manage Hajj. The leader of Iran, Khamenei, called Arab people heartless and murderer of Iranian people. Sadly, the Arab also did not stay quiet and they also traded bombs. They retaliated. Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti Abdulaziz al-Sheikh called Iranians non-Muslim and fire worshippers. He called Iranian Majusi. So this was the thing that added fuel to fire and it increased the intensity of the conflict. Then, viewers, in 2016, Saudi Arabia executed a very famous Shia cleric. Sheikh Bakr Nimr al-Nimr was executed in Saudi Arabia. This was the thing on which almost entire world reacted. And the Shia community was infuriated. People of Iran kicked a severe storm of protest. They set the embassy of Saudi Arabia on fire. They burned the embassy of Saudi Arabia in Tehran. They started protest in Tehran and Shia in all over the world started protest for the execution of this famous Shia leader, Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, who was executed by Saudi Arabia in 2016. So this was the time when both the countries severed their relations. They cut their ties. They closed the embassies in each other's nations and the ambassadors were also exiled. Saudi Arabia exiled the ambassador of Iran and Iran also exiled the ambassador of Saudi Arabia. So 2016 was the time when this conflict started getting serious. The intensity was increased. Then in 2017, Iranians were banned from performing Hajj because of the conflict that erupted in 2016. In 2017, Iranians could not perform Hajj. Then in 2018, the conflict was intensified further. USA withdrew from JCPOA, which is also called the Iran Nuclear Deal, and its full form is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and it is related to the nuclear activities of Iran. So in 2018, USA withdrew from this JCPOA. It was the Trump administration, and Trump withdrew from JCPOA, and Trump imposed sanctions on Iran. This thing infuriated Iran. Then Iran started accumulation of uranium, and studies show that to this day Iran has accumulated uranium to almost 84%. And this was a thing that caused fear in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia opposed Iran's nuclear activities. Then in 2019, Iran attacked on two major oil facilities of Saudi Arabia in retaliation of imposition of sanctions by USA. Because Iran definitely could not attack on USA, but Iran attacked on the oil facilities of KSA because Iran knew that Saudi Arabia provides oil to USA. So this event took place in 2019. Then in 2020, USA killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Iran retaliated and attacked Aramco oil facilities of KSA in 2020. So can you people make sense of all the events that from 2016 the conflict was just getting intensified. The intensity of the conflict was increasing and increasing, and it was very important to understand the peace deal. It was very important that we understand all this background before starting the peace deal. Now we have studied that what happened in 1979, how the conflict started, and what happened after 2016. Now we know in detail the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So we have studied the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia in detail. Now we are at the stage where we would make more sense of this peace deal and we would be able to understand it very well. Well, we have studied it already that China brokered the deal and both the countries reached a peace agreement on March 10, 2023 in Beijing. Diplomatic relations have been resumed. The countries would resume the Security Cooperation Agreement signed in 2001. This Security Cooperation Agreement includes fighting drug trafficking, terrorism, crime, and money laundering also. Moreover, the Agreement on Trade, Economy and Investment signed in 1998 would also be resumed. It is promised that the countries would respect the sovereignty of each other. It is also decided in the peace agreement that the countries would refrain from interfering in their internal affairs. Saudi Arabia would not interfere in the internal affairs of Iran, and Iran would also not interfere in the internal affairs of Saudi Arabia. This is decided in the peace deal. And Iran has opened its embassy in Riyadh on June 6, 2023, but Saudi Arabia has not opened it still, and Ali Raza Inayati would be the ambassador to Saudi Arabia from Iran. So this is the peace deal brokered by China. Now we would study what are the implications of this deal and what are the interests of Iran, Saudi Arabia and China. So now we're going to start with the interest of Saudi Arabia in the deal. Why Saudi Arabia was brought around by China to make this deal with Iran? What happened? And what were the interests of Saudi Arabia? Well, the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, Faisal bin Farhan, who you can see here on the right of this screen. The Foreign Minister of Saudi, Faisal bin Farhan, said that the agreement was evidence of a common desire to solve issues through talks and dialogue. But what are the actual interests of Saudi Arabia? We're going to start with the political interest of Saudi Arabia. Well, we know that some scientists in 2019 announced that Iran has already accumulated 84% of uranium, which is far more than what was allowed in the Iran nuclear deal. which is far more than what is required for the nuclear reactor, for the generation of electricity, or for some social purpose. 84% of uranium is definitely to produce the nuclear weapons. So this was the thing that made Saudi Arabia anxious, that Iran has accumulated 84% of uranium, and the country that guaranteed the security of KSA, which means Saudi Arabia, was not being so affable towards the Saudi Arabia. US security has not been sufficient for KSA since last some years. Saudi Arabia has been constantly disappointed and frustrated by the USA. Well, there have been some events took place in the past few years that made Saudi Arabia realize that now Saudi Arabia cannot rely on USA. Well, first of all, it was the era of Donald Trump, in which Saudi Arabia felt something like that. In 2018, Donald Trump criticized Saudi government on the assassination of a Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. This was the thing that was this incident and this criticism was a major setback to the relations between USA and Saudi Arabia. Then in 2022, the OPEC Plus cut the production of oil by up to 2 million barrels per day. This thing infuriated the Biden administration. And the Biden administration was not happy with this cut. This thing shows that Saudi Arabia and USA are not in friendly relations anymore. And there is something cold in between these two countries. Biden administration after that said that Saudi Arabia will see the consequences of cutting this oil production. So these are the two examples that show that there are some frustration and some tensions between Saudi Arabia and USA. So Saudi Arabia cannot rely on USA anymore. This is the reason that Saudi Arabia is tilting towards East. Saudi Arabia is tilting towards Russia and is getting closer with China. Because Iran has accumulated 84% of uranium, Saudi Arabia cannot rely on USA for its security. So the only option that the country had was to go to East. Saudi Arabia started tilting towards East. It is getting closer with China. This was the thing that brought Saudi Arabia round and that made Saudi Arabia convinced for this deal. This was the political interest of Saudi Arabia, that Iran became successful in accumulating 84% of uranium. So Saudi Arabia didn't want to be a rival of a country that has nuclear weapon or the country in which there is a possibility of producing a nuclear weapon. So Saudi Arabia just played very sagaciously and made a peace deal with this country by the efforts of China. Then another thing is that this deal will provide a respite for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Iran have been rivals for many years, and Iran backs Houthis in Yemen, and Iran backs people from Iraq who attack Saudi Arabia. So this deal will stop these attacks from the land of Iraq, and this thing will provide respite for Saudi Arabia. It will de-escalate tensions between these two countries, and these two countries will be able to maneuver in Middle East. Then China's influence over Iran can help it bolster its security, not militarily but economically and diplomatically. We all know that China has made its influence all over the world by the help of its economy, by engaging countries economically, by making links in the entire world. So this influence will help Saudi Arabia gain its interest, secure its interest in Iran and in the Middle East. So these are the political interests of Saudi Arabia in this deal. it would give Saudi Arabia some space, and the tensions would be released in the Middle East. Now, the economic interest of Saudi Arabia. We all know that China is the country that brokered this deal. And China convinced Saudi Arabia to make peace with Iran. But why China succeeded? How China succeeded? Well, we all know that China is a very strong economy in the world now. And China is ready to invest in Saudi Vision 2030, that is the development plan of Saudi Arabia. It is a long-term development plan of Saudi Arabia. China is ready to invest in this development plan. And one of the major goals of this Saudi Vision 2030 is developing renewable energy in Saudi Arabia. Viewers, we all know that in this century, the entire world is trying to shift from non-renewable energy, which means the fossil fuels and all the petroleum and oil, to renewable energy, which means the solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, these kind of energy, because of the climate change, because we have learned the consequences of using the non-renewable energy. So the entire world is shifting from non-renewable energy to renewable energy, and KSA produces oil. So definitely, KSA would also want to secure its economic interest. KSA would want to shift from non-renewable energy to renewable energy, because the demand of non-renewable energy would definitely decrease in world. So Saudi Arabia wants to secure its economic interest. Saudi Arabia has a Saudi vision of 2030, and China is ready to invest in that vision. So this is the economic interest of Saudi Arabia in this deal also. Moreover, Saudi Arabia also wants to make the economic and trade relations with Iran. This is another economic interest of Saudi Arabia behind this deal. Then the social interest of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia now wants peace in areas populated by Shia community, which means the Qatif region, that is in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. We all know that there were tensions between Shia and Sunni groups in Saudi Arabia and also in Iran. So now this deal would give a message to the world that yes, the two main leaders of Shia community, that is Iran, and the Sunni community, that is Saudi Arabia, have made peace. So now the local groups should also make peace. This would reduce the domestic tensions, and it would make the prevalence of peace possible in the society. So this was the social interest of Saudi Arabia in this deal. Now let's see what were the interests of Iran in the Iran and Saudi Arabia peace deal. First of all, the foreign minister of Iran, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, let's see what did he say. Well, he remarked on this deal that the return of normal relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia provides great capacities to the two countries, the region, and the Islamic world. This was the reaction of the Iran's foreign minister on this deal. Now let's see what were the political interests of Iran. Viewers, Iran has been facing many challenges since 2016. In 2018, US withdrew from JCPOA and imposed sanctions on Iran. Iran faced a very difficult time. It got isolated over its human rights issues. I'm talking about the issue of Mahsa al-Amini, then the nuclear program and support for Russia in Ukraine war. These were all the things that isolated Iran in this world, and we all know that no nation can survive in isolation in this world. So Iran was compelled to make peace with Saudi Arabia when China gave this option to Iran. Another thing was that USA was trying to bring Israel and Saudi Arabia closer, and this thing would have isolated Iran completely in the world, and this would have been very detrimental to Iran. So this is the thing that Iran got ready to make peace with Saudi Arabia. This deal de-escalated tensions between Saudi and Iran. Now, Iran will be supported by Saudi politically as well as economically. Moreover, this deal will help Iran strengthen its ties with other nations also. Now Iran has its allies in the Middle East. Iran has made peace with the Saudi Arabia. Iran is now in good relations with China, Russia also, and Iran can also make relations with India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan also. So these were the political interests of Iran. Iran wanted to prevent the political isolation in the world. Now, what were the economic interests of Iran? Well, it is very simple. Iran wanted to start trade with the other countries. In 2018, sanctions were imposed on Iran by USA, and no country likes sanctions. So Iran wanted to make this peace with Saudi Arabia so that Saudi Arabia can start and Iran can start trade with the countries in the world. Now, Saudi will start trade and investment in Iran, and studies show that the announcement of this deal, just the announcement of this deal, generated optimism for Iran's economy. The rial of Iran strengthened in value by more than 10% to 45,000 on March 11. So there were definitely some economic interest of Iran behind this deal. Then the social interests are similar to the social interest of Saudi Arabia. Iran wanted peace in its society also. Now the domestic tensions between Shia and Sunni sects will also be released in Iran as well as in Saudi Arabia. So these were all the interests of Iran, all the political interest, economic interest, and social interest that brought Iran and Saudi Arabia together. Now, a quite interesting part of this video, the interest of China and the benefits of China. Why China brokered this deal? What are the interests of China and what are the benefits for China in this deal? Starting with the political interest of China. Well, we all know, all the students of political science and those who have some interest in current affairs do know that for the past few years, China is developing, China is rising, and it's trying to surpass the economy of USA. Its economy is rising, and today it is one of the strongest economy of the world. So economically, China has developed. China is to surpass USA very soon. And now China has started showing its diplomatic skills also. It is replacing USA in the region where USA was once considered as the sole arbitrator. Now China is also showing its skills. China is showing that yes, China can broker deals among two sworn enemies. China actually balanced between the two leaders of Islamic world and oil cartel instead of siding with one. Unlike USA. USA always sided with Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and USA always tried to present military solutions to the two rivals. But China tried to balance between the two leaders of Islamic world. And it is also interesting to note that before this, China never intervened in internal affairs, or China never took part in any deal in Middle East or North Africa. China always performed neutrally. But today, China brokered this deal, and China balanced between these two leaders because China is trying to increase its influence in the world. This is the political interest of China. China is trying to replace USA in the region. China's growing trade and economic links enables it to utilize its global weight and influence as a peace broker. China wants its influence in the world now. because China has strengthened its economy and now it has the global weightage to become an influencer and to perform the role of a peace broker. China is trying to gain weight and is trying to replace USA in Middle East. This was the main political interest of China. Now let's see what were the economic interests of China. We all know that China's economy is growing day by day. Today it is one of the strongest economy of the world. And to run industries, the country need oil and the energy. China gets 40% of oil from this region, the Gulf region, from the KSA and Iran. And we all know that if there is an instability in the region, it would definitely hurt the economy of China, because there would be instability in the extraction of oil and in the import and export of oil. So China wants stability in the region for its own economy. It wants to secure the energy supply for its massive industries. Because it gets 40% of oil from the region, it is the leading importer of oil from the Gulf countries, and China has become the leading trade and diplomatic partner of Middle East. So this was the main economic interest of China in brokering this peace deal, because China wanted a stability in this region for its own economy, for its own energy security. So this was the economic interest and the political interest. First of all, China wants to replace USA in the region. Now China wants to show its diplomatic skills also. China wants to become a good diplomat also in the region. This was the political interest of China. And the economic interest is the energy security. This is the reason that China brokered this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now this part of the video is very interesting. We're going to compare the role of USA and China in Middle East. Before this, viewers, China never played the role of a broker. China never intervened in affair of Middle East or North Africa. But today, China has intervened and China solved this matter very sagaciously without some military solution. So now we're gonna compare the approaches of China and USA in the Middle East. First of all, China has been neutral in Middle East, but USA sided with Saudi Arabia and opposed Iran. It imposed sanctions on Iran. Then China engaged everyone economically. It engaged Saudi Arabia economically, it engaged Pakistan economically, and it engaged all the nations in its project, that is BRI. A series of projects, that is BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. So it engaged everyone economically but not militarily. But USA waged war in Middle East that disturbed the peace of Middle East. USA waged war in Iraq. USA waged war in Lebanon. These were the things that disturbed the peace of Middle East, and these were the destabilizing factors that were waged by USA in Middle East. Then China was unbiased and considered as honest peace broker. USA could never have been considered as an honest peace broker. I mean, even if there was a political will of USA, it could never have been considered as an honest peace broker, because it had always sided with the KSA, and it had always been considered as a rival of Iran. It always tried to isolate Iran, and it sided with KSA, and we all know that USA is ally of Israel, and USA was trying to bring Israel and KSA together, which was not good for Iran. So even if there was a political will, USA could never have been an honest peace broker of this deal. So this is the difference between China and USA. Then we all know that China and Russia are ready to invest in Saudi Arabia and Iran also without imposing their conditions, because all China is interested in is the economy. But we all know that USA always imposes conditions before helping any country. A very good example is Pakistan here. USA helped Pakistan when Pakistan agreed to play a role in war on terror in Afghanistan. USA sent aid to Pakistan when Pakistan got involved in war on terror. And Pakistan faced very dire consequences of this war on terror. Then another difference, China made efforts to make peace between the two rival nations and did not go for a military solution, but USA military operations led to the growth of terrorist groups in Middle East such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. These were the destabilizing factors that were introduced by USA in Middle East. So this is the major difference between the approach of China and USA in solving an issue in Middle East. And in 2023, all the world has observed this. Now all the world is witness to this. Now viewers, the most important and interesting part of this video, implications of deal on Pakistan. How this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia would impact Pakistan. Well, the deal presents positive diplomatic and economic opportunities for Pakistan. Pakistan can benefit from this deal. This deal is undoubtedly positive for Pakistan. Dr. Maliha Lodhi said, "It is a game changer for the region as well as the world." Now let us start with the political impacts. What are the political impacts of this deal on Pakistan, or we can say political implications? First of all, this deal has opened a diplomatic space for Pakistan. We all know that this deal is very much important for Pakistan. Why? Because one of the country is the immediate neighbor of Pakistan. Iran is a neighbor of Pakistan. Iran is in the west of Pakistan. It shares border with Pakistan. The other party, that is Saudi Arabia, Pakistan has friendly relations with Saudi Arabia also. Then the mediator, China. Pakistan is a key ally of China. So this deal is of much importance for Pakistan. Now, it has opened a diplomatic space for Pakistan. We all know that before this deal, when Saudi Arabia and Iran were rival to each other, Pakistan was always on a tight rope. Pakistan could not maneuver in Middle East freely. Pakistan could not deal with Iran freely because it knew that Iran is rival to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia was in friendly relations with Pakistan. So Pakistan knew that we cannot deal with Iran in a very good space. Pakistan was always on a tightrope. Pakistan was in a fear. And Pakistan was also not free to Saudi Arabia, not free to deal with Saudi Arabia because it knew that one of its neighbor, Iran, is a rival country of Saudi Arabia. So Pakistan was always on a tightrope and it could not maneuver freely in the Middle East. Now Pakistan has a diplomatic space. Now this deal has opened a diplomatic space for Pakistan. It has positive political implications for Pakistan. Another thing, very positive thing, is that Saudi Arabia and Iran now can help Pakistan and India resolve their conflicts and reach to a peace agreement also. There is an atmosphere of conflict resolution in the region. There is a tilt towards conflict resolution in the region. So this atmosphere can help Pakistan and India also. We all know that China, Iran, Pakistan and India are members of Saudi Arabia. Not Saudi Arabia, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I beg pardon, I used the wrong word. China, Iran, Pakistan and India. These four countries are members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So these countries can use the platform of this organization also to resolve the issues between Iran, Pakistan and India. And Saudi Arabia has also promised to be a to be a dialogue partner. So this is another political impact of this deal. It poses positive implications for Pakistan and the region, most importantly. Then this convergence of two main leaders of Islamic world can lead to the solution of other complex problems of the region also, for example, Afghanistan. These two leaders can now sit on the table, and instead of involving West in this region, instead of involving USA in the region, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and all the leaders of this region can definitely find a solution for the complex problems of this region. And a very complex problem is of Afghanistan. So and if the issue of Afghanistan is resolved, if the peace prevails in Afghanistan, this is definitely very good for Pakistan, because Afghanistan is also in west of Pakistan. It is also an immediate neighbor of Pakistan. So this would be very good for Pakistan if peace prevails in Afghanistan. So these are the political impacts of this deal on Pakistan. Let's study the economic impacts of Iran and Saudi Arabia peace deal on Pakistan. First of all, now we know that peace would prevail in this region, in Middle East. So, taking the advantage of the peace in Middle East, Pakistan can improve its potential of engagement in Middle East and Central Asia commercially and economically. Pakistan can engage with this region now. Pakistan knows that now there is no rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So Pakistan can very freely, very smoothly can deal with Iran, and it can deal with Saudi Arabia also. This is a very good economic impact on Pakistan. Then Pakistan can seek investment from both the countries in CPEC also, and Pakistan can mainstream these two countries in CPEC also, especially Iran. Iran is a neighbor of Pakistan. You can see it right here on this map. Here is Pakistan and here is Iran. In the west of Pakistan, Pakistan can mainstream Iran in CPEC. It can seek investment from Saudi Arabia and Iran also. Moreover, Iran has vast untapped natural gas and energy reserves that can help Pakistan come out of its energy crisis. Pakistan can deal with Iran on this natural gas trade very smoothly and with peace of mind, very freely, because now Pakistan knows that one of its friendly relatives, Saudi Arabia, is not in rivalry with Iran. Pakistan can now do this. Moreover, Pakistan's geography offers vast opportunities for regional connectivity. Here is Pakistan, and in the east of Pakistan there is India. In the west of Pakistan there is Iran. In the northern west there is Afghanistan, and then in the north there is Central Asia and all the other countries. So this geography offers vast opportunities for regional connectivity for Iran, for Saudi Arabia, for China also. So these are the economic impacts of this deal on Pakistan. Now, what are the social impacts? Social impacts are similar to the other countries. The domestic sectarian friction will also be reduced in Pakistan. Unfortunately, in the Balochistan, in this part of this area of Pakistan, there were conflicts between Shia and Sunni sects, and the Shia were supported by Iran because this border, Pakistan shares the western border with Iran, and Shia were supported by Iran and Sunni were supported and financed by Saudi Arabia. So now the domestic sectarian friction will be reduced in Pakistan because the groups would know that now Iran and Saudi Arabia are friends to each other. So this would help in the peace, in the prevalence of peace in the society. This would be a very good, very positive social impact on the society of Pakistan. So these were all the implications of the deal for Pakistan, and I hope that all the listeners understood what I was trying to deliver in this video. So this is the end of this video, and I would say the lecture also. This was the recent development that happened in 2023, in March 2023. I tried to deliver it, and all the CSS aspirants can definitely take benefit from this lecture. This is enough for today, and thank you. Allah Hafiz, and don't forget to subscribe the channel Knowledge Realm.